permissions as permission. This will be actually the permission ID. So the request will send an array of permission IDs. And now let's insert it. Table role permission. Insert role ID is equal to role ID, and permission ID is the same as permission ID. So this is how we insert the roles and also the permissions. Let's do the same for the update. Now we update the role here, but for the permission is this part is the same, but first we have to delete them. Role permission, where role ID is equal to role ID. Delete. So why I did this? Because when we update, we have to check which is changed, which is not changed. And the best way to deal with it is by removing all the permissions that were assigned in the beginning and adding the new permissions again. And let's copy this line again here, and we need to paste it here. So when we delete a role, we have to delete also the role permissions. Now let's try it on Postman. Let's get all the roles first. We can see that along with the role we have also the permissions. Editor has its own permissions, and the viewer also. We also have a pivot here, which is the role permission table. Now let's try to create a role. Change it to post, and let's add a name, custom. Now we need the permissions also. And this needs to be an array. So a better way to insert the permissions is by using a JSON format here. JSON. So the name should be custom. The permissions should be an array with permissions ID. So I will put 1, 2, 5 and 6. Let's send the request. We can see we created the role custom with an ID 4 with view users, edit users, view products and edit products. This is how we create a role with permissions. We can also update it, put, and now I just want permission 1, and for the role number 4. We can see now that the role has only one permission. This is the current authenticated user API. The frontend app will need its permissions also. So we need to add another field here for the permissions. But there is a problem. We cannot add the permissions in the user resource because it will automatically add the permissions in all the other requests. So how can we add the permissions only here and not in the other requests? We can do that by adding an additional field in the resource. But first, let's add the permissions as a function in the user model. public function permissions. We will get the permissions via the role, so this role, and the role will have the permissions. Let me highlight this permission connection. Let's connect to the Docker container and run PHP Artisan IDE models. So the permissions is highlighted, but we cannot do it like this because this will return permissions as an array. We want just the name of the permissions. Laravel has already a function for it, which is pluck. Pluck lets us group a specific field, which is name in this case, and return it as an array. Now we have all the permissions as an array. Now we need to add them in the user call. Let's get first the user as a variable and add it here. Now, in order to add a new field, a new additional field, we have to use the resource additional function. Here we need to add a new additional field that is not necessarily needs to be added on the other API resources. So first we have to add data, because the user is shown in the data first, and here we need to add the permissions. Permissions will be user permissions. So this is how we add an additional field. Let's try it on the Postman. We can see that we got the permissions here, but unfortunately we got also the permissions here. Why is that? Because when we load the permissions from the role, it will automatically attach it in the user resource also. But this won't bother us for now, so we will keep it like this. Now we need also to return all the permissions. Let's create the controller, make controller permission controller. We need also to create the resource, PHP Artisan, make resource, permission resource. Now let's go to the permission controller and here add an index function that returns permission resource collection permission all. Let's add this route to the API, and here we will add the permissions, permission controller, and we need only the index.